mobile phones are silent for the duration of the meeting. And please note, filming and recording are permitted at our council meetings, and we will always ask for any filming to be considerate towards other people in the room and take care not to disturb the proceedings. I've not received any apologies for absence. No? Okay. Urgent items appear on supplemental agenda number 1, and they're item 7, deputation requests, item 20, borough-wide safety, and item 21, the borough emergency plan. And can you note, please, item 16, the appropriation from a manor place depot for planning purposes, that item has now been withdrawn. Notice of intention to conduct business in a closed session and any representation is received. Item 23, commercial property addition of income generating asset. That will be dealt with in closed session. No representations have been received. Item 4, disclosure of interest and dispensations. Colleagues should have received advice from the on behalf of the monitoring officer. Are there any disclosable pecuniary interests or dispensations anyone needs to make for this meeting? Okay. In terms of ordering the items, I've been asked to take item 13 ahead of item 12, which I will do. And item 21, the borough emergency plan, will be taken earlier in the agenda. Who's here for item 21, which is the borough emergency plan? Andy Snazzle. Excellent. When do you need to be away by, Andy?
I've been taking the police station for 6.
Okay. Fantastic. Great. We've had one public question from Paul Pally. Is Paul here? No, it's a question to Deputy Leading Cabinet Member for Housing. How many refurbished tower blocks in Southwark combine cladding with an external gas pipe? And the response from the Deputy Leading Cabinet Member for Housing is as follows, and it's nice and short, so you can read it out.
Yep, so only 5 blocks have over 18 metres have cladding. This is the external wall installation type installed by British Gas to provide better thermal efficiency to homes. British Gas specify the method in which gas pipework can be safely fitted onto this cladding, and their specifications be met in full. 5 blocks are Bradley House, Morris House in Cherry Garden Street, Gould Court, Falls Court, and Asley House numbers 1 to 90 and 1A and 1B.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Cryan. Let's move on then to deputation requests. We have the Walworth Society. Norma, Peter and Jeremy are here. I should say we've got 3 deputation requests in total, although one has now been withdrawn. So there's Walworth Society, Southwark Artists and Occupation Studios in Newington Ward. They've withdrawn their deputation request. And then we've got Bankside Residence Forum, and we've got Vermeer and Marion for that in due course. But we'll take the Walworth Society, if we might, first. And the Walworth Society, I'm told, would like to provide a response to Cabinet on the Council's proposals for Walworth Town Hall, as well as giving society views on the future of the Town Hall buildings, significance of buildings in the future for Walworth area, the location, proposed replacement library, the future of the viewing collection, and related issues. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Fantastic. Jeremy, over to you. If you press the button on the right in front of you, you've got up to 5 minutes to talk to us.
Thank you. We would like to thank you for accepting this deputation and to thank Councillor Williams for coming along to the recent Walworth Society meeting. Our comments are based on the issues raised at that meeting in the survey that we've been running with the Walworth councillors, which has had a total of 265 responses. Our starting point is the future of the Walworth area and the Walworth Road in the light of developments at the Elephant and Castle and Elephant Park. As the nature of retail changes with the rise of online shopping, a significant body of research points to the importance of components such as libraries and other civic drivers of footfall for the successful and vibrant town centres and high streets. Our own research around the Walworth Road conservation area identified the Walworth Town Hall and Newington Library, along with East Street Market and individual shops such as Ollie Stores and Morrison's, as the principal drivers of footfall along the Walworth Road. We fear in particular that the proposed re-providing of the Newington Library, which was described in the recent Cabinet report as occurring in the local area, may in fact happen to the north of Wanty Street. The library. The loss of the library into Elephant Park or the Elephant and Castle Town Centre would be an enormous blow for Walworth, as footfall would be driven away from the Walworth area. Conversely, a new library facility in Walworth would draw people south from the Elephant and introduce its new residents, workers, students and other visitors to its shops and character. We are proposing therefore that Southwark investigates whether the new library facility can be built to the south of Wanty Street and thus close to the heart of the Walworth area. Potentially it could be included in one of the development sites, such as in Chatelaine House or Morrison's. Southwark now has an excellent track record with its libraries, and we envisage a facility which combines a lending and reference library with community space, informal workspace and cafe facilities, which are making the John Harvard Library such a vibrant success. The Procurement collection. In our recent survey and at the public meeting, what comes across very strongly is the significance of the Procurement collection. There is also a hunger to create a hub that can celebrate the rich history and heritage of Southwark, which is a major absence from the borough's overall offer at present, we feel. We feel too that there is strong support for maintaining the Procurement collection in one place where it can be displayed and be visited effectively. Of course, we would like that to occur in the town hall buildings, but if that is not possible, we suggest that space is created that is additional to the new library, which can still be managed efficiently and which can act as a permanent home for a museum for the history of Southwark, and is also home for the Procurement collection, the Southwark Art collection and the local archive. Future uses of the town hall and Newington Library buildings. For these buildings, people could not have been clearer that it is vital to retain public access to the historically significant parts of the buildings and to develop usages which invite local people to visit them. Support exists for an arts and cultural use. There are, however, concerns about Southwark's capacity to identify a suitable partner or consortium on its own, and in the light of the success that Southwark has had with attractions such as Tate Modern and the New Bridge Theatre, we suggest close engagement with other bodies such as the GLA, the Arts Council, and to draw in expertise from cultural institutions to create a credible package for the redevelopment and then running of a successful cultural and arts attraction. We would also encourage Southwark to be open in the tender process to other more local development options, ranging from a community asset transfer to external partners working with local community plan for the buildings that includes raising capital and creating a viable business model. The process might also include plans for the NHS property next door and taking that into consideration as part of the redevelopment of the town hall buildings. To summarise, the overall opportunity. We see the issues that are faced over the future of the town hall buildings, the location of a new library and how Southwark tells the story of its heritage as difficult but also tremendous opportunities for the Walworth area. Done well, we have the ability to establish a gateway into Walworth, connecting the new development at the Elephant and Castle with Walworth very much as the SPD from 2012 envisaged, with its opportunity area genuinely extending south into the Walworth area. By working together, listening to local people, developing an ambitious vision and partnerships, we can create a new destination valued by local people and visitors and secure the future of these important cultural assets for the generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy, for that excellent presentation. I don't know that colleagues have got questions. I've got a quick question, I guess on timing, I suppose, because you identified a couple of sites that might be suitable for a new library. The concern, obviously, that we have the libraries in a temporary building at the moment, that it may be possible to shift that temporary building around the Elephant Park site. But what's the Society's feeling about, you know, how long it's prepared to wait for a new library facility when there is the prospect of, albeit north of Wanty Street, potentially a new library sooner rather than later? What do you think the Society's view is on that, and how long people are prepared to wait? Is that?
I think they are prepared.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
it's more complicated. I think anyway, my question is it might be irrelevant.
I think what we are concerned about is delays, obviously, because of the delays that have happened. Things have overtaken what the development on the library and what's happening about the town hall, we know how many years. people have got impatient about that. I think if to get the right thing, then we would take the time. I think that I don't think anybody's foolish about what we realise are the problems to do with trying to do this, and therefore, as long as we knew there was a commitment, and the commitment was likely to produce a result, because people are feeling somewhat let down, as you know, from the previous.
And we had a very specific question in the survey that addressed this issue, and people were, they said they were in this for the long term to get it right.
Yeah. Okay, Jeremy. And then I've got Mark. I know Rebecca, you wanted to say a couple of words as a board councillor as well. So.
Thank you, and thank you for the deputation. Thank you for the warm welcome I got at the Walworth Society last week. And it was fine most to get out, and it was good. It was good detailed questioning. I suppose the thing from the survey, and thank you for sending some of the headlines across to me in advance, is the very strong support for maintaining as much public access, particularly the historic parts of the collection of buildings as possible, running them, and also to maintain that footfall down Walworth Road. Walworth Road is doing very well at the moment. There's not many vacant units, but as Elephant Park and the retail there comes on stream and opens in the not too distant future, we need to make sure, as you say, that our plans that the work at the Elephant support the Walworth Road and doesn't challenge the Walworth Road is absolutely key and central to our thinking. And I have spoken to officers in detail about looking at alternative sites that are south of Wanty Street, and that analysis and that work's underway at the moment. Obviously, we can't make any promises, and we've got to wait and see what comes back on that. My question to you really is: will you carry on working with us through this difficult, challenging process, and will you potentially in the future repeat the exercise that you've done, try and get more views from local residents and see what they think from kind of the wider catchment area?
I'll take that. We are quite willing to work with you. I hope that you're quite willing to work with us.
Absolutely.
And most of all, we hope you've been listening to the locals, because if you don't listen, then what's the point? So, as long as you're prepared to listen, that's fine. We don't mind working with you.
Thanks, Norman. Rebecca, do you want to comment? And I know John's got a question, but if you'd like to speak, that would be great.
Thanks, Peter. So I just wanted to say a couple of words. I wanted to say thank you to the Walworth Society for keeping this as an issue. And we're really keen, as the local Walworth councillors, that this issue isn't something that's forgotten about or put in that kind of too difficult to deal with box. It's something that comes up on the doorstep a lot, especially at the streets in the north of Walworth. People are really grateful that we've got an interim use, that we've got an interim library, but it's about making sure that we've got the continued provision of those services, and I think that comes through in the survey results as well, with an overwhelming number of people saying that the library is the most important thing that we need to replace. But I think as well, it's about the kind of heritage element of it and having that public access and having a building that people can actually get into. I think the fact that it's still got security and it's still boarded up is an issue for us, and it's a really important part of the work that we're doing in the wider Walworth area, and being able to bring the town hall back into a use that allows the public to access it and allows it to be part of the wider kind of Walworth Square, and then opening up into Elephant Park and into the new plans for the new shopping centre and the new Delancey developments. It's a really important part of that whole kind of overall work that we can do.
Thanks, Rebecca. Johnson, you had a question.
Again, just to echo sentiments from colleagues as well. So thank you for bringing deputation and for all of your work over the last few months and in the years as well. A question and a statement. The question I wanted to ask is, part of what's happened with the community collection is that it's been able to go on tour, and it's been able to go to local schools, it's been able to engage with local residents as well. As Mark's quite rightly said, it's important that we have a local library offer. And once we've chosen a site, it's important that we have a library that works for local residents. And so my question to the Walworth Society will be simply, would you be willing to work with local residents and local communities? I'm sure you do. Would you be willing to work with us as a council to ensure that the local library offer works for the Walworth Society and for the Walworth residents more widely, generally? And then a second point was, I know some of the questions that have been raised was, how do we ensure the Walworth Road more widely continues to have that footfall post any activity in a wider area? And I know there's been some work both in terms of local economy and in terms of the fantastic Walworth projects you've been running to ensure that football continues in the area. And I just wanted to ask, do you have any activity in the coming months or years to continue that effort?
So just to reply to those separately, if I may, I think what's, ever since we had the meeting, Mark, I think what's really interesting is the number of people that are coming forward saying, you know, they understand how big the issues are, but they'd also, there's a strange outpouring of community in Walworth that is quite sort of striking, really. And I think that obviously we're very keen to work with the council on this. It, you know, could be not be more important, but there are lots of different ways that this could turn out. And I think that's why we made the point in the deputation text about being open to other ways of working. You know, I mean, there's so many organisations in the Walworth area that want to get their hands dirty and want to get involved, and it's kind of sort of being open to, I don't know, in a way trying to facilitate those groups working together. I think obviously yes, but I think that we could come up with something even better that might, you know, start to take us some of the strain off your resources, because we know how difficult this is. But it's kind of, if you can facilitate a process that draws people and allows people to be creative, I think the process is almost as important here as the solution. So absolutely yes. All that we've tried to do here is in relation to the future of the Walworth Road. I mean, since 2010 we've been aware of this juggernaut coming down the track, and that's, you know, you know, however, whatever you think of it, the whole aim of gaining the conservation area status was about giving the chance for an offer around character and human scale around the Walworth area that may be distinct from the Elephant and potentially in the longer term at the Aylesbury. All we're thinking about is about the future competitiveness, and Walworth's more than just a high street and a set of residential properties. We're trying to do this to make sure there's still a place called Walworth and that identity. So I think that very much concerns us, Johnson, and we do want to very much work with you all on that.
I'm just sorry, I've gone way over 5 minutes on questions, but I was just thinking then as you talk then, Jeremy, obviously the proposal is, and we're going to see it sooner rather than later, a new library at Site 18 at the Aylesbury, which would arguably be in Walworth, but south of Walworth. I mean, do you think that kind of alters your argument to talk about where a Walworth library needs to be? Or do we have to wait and see what the impact is when it opens?
Yeah, because it takes it away from, it takes it that side of the road right up.
Yeah.
You're taking it into Faraday right the way up, not into Walworth itself, which covers also the other side of the road, going up over, say, the only other small library we've got is Brandon, this little Brandon library. And okay, we've got one at the end of East Street, but there's that huge central block around Walworth Road, and particularly with the building that's going on, which is right onto the road, don't forget. There are going to be so many people coming in. I mean, so it doesn't help to that extent. It's not the answer.
No, but I wonder whether it affected the geography of where the library needed to be. It should be south of Wandy Street, and therefore is north of Wandy Street a complete no-no if you're balancing it out with a new library facility there. Do people have that in mind when they've been answering the questions about where a new Walworth library should be?
I think they have, and I think that the meeting made that very clear. And again, it's at the core of the deputation text. Really, it's just that fear that people will move north rather than people will be asked. I do think there are issues around deprivation in Walworth that do mean that, you know, in relation to employment prospects, and the John Harvard's amazing with the workspace and just how vibrant it is really. We feel that all we thought is Chatelaine House and the Morrison site, and I know Chatelaine House might be easy for you because it's more immediate, but it's that idea of in the heart of Walworth, around the Walworth Road, driving footfall, and also, you know, a location where people can get information about jobs and all those other broader community things that libraries now seem to do much better.
Okay, and Mark, very kindly.
Just one quick comment on that as well. I think that one of the challenges with Plot 18 is the new library there isn't due to open until 2021. So it's still a bit, start of 2021 that is, but it's still a bit of time off, and hopefully will be some way to getting this resolved before then. He's having a decision. Questions for Councillor Lurie. So there's the consultation responses that we've had, the survey that Walworth Society done. I was just reading in your ward work and going out kind of across the wider area, what kind of response and what your constituents have been raising on the doorstep about future provision of the library and future use of the town hall?
So it's, as I mentioned, it's an issue that comes up a lot in kind of the north bit of East Walworth, and then it's something that sort of Charlton Street, Larkham Street, all of that kind of area, because they're directly impacted by the fact that that's where the library was. To them, they have a better idea of where it is, I think. But you know, I think to them it's really important that there is still a library provision. I think kind of having artworks there has been a real eye-opener to what you could put in that space and how well it's used, and actually being able to have the library there has been really beneficial to keeping people in the local area and keeping them kind of connected to both sides of the Walworth Road. So I think it's something that people raise with us is, when are we going to have a new library, where is it going to be, and it's kind of, we want it locally, we want to be able to access it, we want to be able to kind of access the town hall again, we want to be able to have that kind of public space that we had. So it's kind of exactly what was mirrored in the survey. I think the survey's captured a really good breadth of people actually from the Walworth area, which is similar to a number of conversations that I've had with kind of local residents about what they want for the future of the town.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. That was great, thank you very much. Okay, we move on to Backside Residents Forum and Amir, Ian and Marion Maple are here. Okay, in your deputation is about community-led housing at the TfL landmark court site on Southwark Street. So if you press the button on your right, it's over to you.
Okay, so it's a very short presentation. So we support the council in its desire to build much needed, genuinely affordable housing. We acknowledge the issues regarding the economics of house building and viability. We also acknowledge that whilst it is true that more genuinely affordable housing could be built off-site as opposed to on-site, we're sure that the Cabinet would agree that we must ensure that Bankside remains a mixed community true to its historical past. In the spirit of great legends, such as Ted Bowman and George Nicholson, and what they have achieved with the success of Coin Street Community Builders, we seek to work with the Council and all relevant stakeholders to ensure genuinely affordable housing is built through community-led housing at TfL's landmark court site on Southwark Street and Southwark Station on Blackfriars Road. We have been in and are going to make communication with the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, several GLA members, TfL, Triangle London Developments, Neil Coyle, and seek to work closely with Coin Street Community Builders, JMB Level Market, New Economics Foundation, and the Community Land Trust Network on this matter. Broadly, these individuals and organisations are very supportive of community-led housing and genuinely affordable housing. Will the Council work with us on this endeavour to ensure genuinely affordable housing through community-led housing at Landmark Court on Southwark Street and Southwark Station on Blackfriars Road, and will the leader and relevant Cabinet member meet with us to discuss this endeavour in detail?
Thanks, Amir. That's a pretty straightforward question. I mean, my answer is yes, we will. Mark, do you want to say anything different? Is there a more nuanced reply?
I think there may well be a more nuanced reply, and I think it's very wise to leave it. You know. So yes, yeah, more than happy to maybe talk about this in more detail. As you know, and as you referenced some of the names there, we've got experience of working with the Community Land Trust, the Southwark and Peckham Citizens, and also Level Market JMB in terms of delivering some of our new council homes and some of our new intermediate homes that we're building at the moment. In both of those, it has proven challenging in a good way, and there's a lot of obstacles to overcome to make them work and to make them stack up financially. In both of those cases, one of them has been agreed, and one of them is hopefully touch wood, we get the gap funding from the GLA for the Community Land Trust down in Peckham through to the next stage, which is good. But it's that we've been the landowner, so we've been able to use our land holdings to help deliver those new type of homes there. Challenge with Landmark Court, as you said, as you know, it's Transport for London. Transport for London are currently out to procure a partner to deliver those homes. I think it's going to be a public announcement not too soon on who that partner is, if it hasn't already been made. Has it been made? Yeah, Triangle. So it's really for us, once we've had our discussions, if it's something we think we can support in detail, that we can lobby them. They've obviously got a brief from Transport for London that they need to deliver against in terms of affordable housing, which is something that's very important to the Mayor. We'd also get that financial return to Transport for London to support transport infrastructure investment, but certainly we'll discuss it in more detail and see what we can come up with.
Is it Community Land Trust that you've got in mind for delivery of the units of these two sites?
So in terms of community-led housing, I think we've got different models, but we just wanted to explore these. So it could mean we are significantly involved in the discussions. It could mean that we're helping producing the resources, it could mean community land trust network. I think there's lots of different options, and people like Conning Street and JB, we've been discussing with them, and they think it's a good idea to explore all the options basically.
Great. Well, I think it's two great signs for that kind of thing to happen. So, fantastic. So let's get a date in the diary. All right. Thank you both very much indeed. Unless anyone has any other questions? No? No? Great. Thank you very much. Okay, we move on to the... Where have we done the minutes?
Straight from public questions. No,
Oh, yeah. Okay, thanks very much. I know. The minutes, colleagues. Well, just fine. They begin at page 7. Yeah. Agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. We move on therefore to Air Quality Strategy and Action Plan 2017 to 2022 which was introduced.
And I think is an important feature. It's particularly pleasing to see the inspection's view on our work with children at risk of child sexual exploitation, female genital mutilation, and also gangs and teenage work. So these are real challenges for inner city boroughs, and they found us to be very strong in those areas. As Councillor Mills has said, the areas for improvement in particular include care leavers and care. I remind Cabinet that just a short while ago we were successful in DFE bid, innovation bid, and we've secured £3 million to help us innovate, and that was on the back of us coming up with plans of how we want to take forward our care leaver service and our care service. So although an action plan has now been developed and will come to Cabinet, I'd just like to reassure Cabinet that work has already begun some months ago, and indeed we've been having sessions with young people and with Catch 22 to co-produce that work. So children and young people really are at the heart of that development of the service. So it's not just what we think or Ofsted think, it's also what young people and care leavers think would be right for them. I think it is captured in the report well, but it's worth a shout out in terms of adoption that this really does include some innovative work around foster to adopt. So 10 of our young people who've been adopted were initially fostered by families who then decided they wanted to come together as forever families, and that's very unusual, and it's not a typical policy or practice in local government. So there's something I think quite important in there in terms of the risk that we took and those families took that came off very well. So foster to adopt I think is something I really want to bring to people's attention too. As Councillor Mills said, the inspectors found that children were at the heart of our services, and I think the other two important messages, one of which features in the report and one which doesn't. So first is the one that doesn't. In the final feedback session to lead member and chief executive, myself and colleagues, the inspectors reflected that the night before the final day with us, they were having dinner in the borough, and they were speaking about the subject and what they found and reflecting now that the report was agreed. And they said that as social workers themselves, they all agreed that if they were to leave Ofsted tomorrow and return to a local authority, they'd like to work in Southwark. And I think that really speaks volumes for what they found in terms of how we support our social workers and the immensely difficult job we asked them to do, and what this borough is like as a place for raising children, supporting families and tackling very difficult issues. So that meant a lot to us, and the other point that has been mentioned but isn't the report, and I would thank you to the Cabinet for, is the strong political commitment and passion for truly achieving the very best for our children and young people. That underpins our service and empowers our social workers to go out and do the work that they do. So we will develop our action plan. The report has already been to scrutiny and to corporate parenting committee, and we very much see this work being held at corporate parenting committee, so that we can be assured that each step we take is taking us towards consistently good and better across children's services. We welcome the opportunity for you to comment today and indeed to come back in September with the action plan, but really strong basis for going forward, and sincere thanks as well to social work colleagues for the tremendous work they do. But that only works in the context of political support and the right culture and the right model. So many thanks indeed.
Thanks, David, and thanks to you and all in your team for the work that you've done. Okay, got Steph Bryan.
Yeah, thank you, David, and also thank you to all the social workers. I think this report shows the commitment and support they give to our young people and to children in the borough. I just want to ask a question around care leavers and accommodation, because I think a few months ago we brought a report to Cabinet around supported living and helping into independent, care leavers into independent living. In light of the Ofsted report, is there anything in that report that now needs to change or needs to be added to it? In light of the Ofsted recommendations, or are we still confident that plan is still good purpose?
We're still confident the plan is good for purpose because it acknowledges that there is a lot that needs to change. In terms of our plans for accommodating young people and placements, care placements, most of our care placements are foster carers, and we do need to increase our pool of foster carers. But for those children who can't be supported in foster carers, two significant things have happened. Firstly, the sector has run away with itself. An independent sector of providers has run away with itself, both in terms of cost and in terms of those who are choosing to remain in the sector and those who are not. So the simple example I would give is that most children's charities now no longer provide services to children. They lobby on behalf of children, but they don't provide services to children. So it's largely become a private sector of provision. But our strategy and approach has already acknowledged that there's more that we will have to do to provide stable and good quality provision. So we'd already acknowledged that and we're moving in that direction. And then for post-16 and our care leaver support, this council is very, very supportive of our care leavers, and in practice for some that works really well and for others not, but we had already identified that. So the Corporate Parenting Committee have been looking very closely at this, and I'm sure we'll continue to look closely at it. So there's more work for us to do. It only change the direction. If anything, it just underscores the need for pace and the need to make sure that we have greater control over the provision that's out there.
Thanks, David. Anyone else want to raise points on this report? Otherwise, we're asked to receive the report and to look forward to the action plan coming back in September, which I think we can agree.
Agreed.
Thank you very much indeed, David. Thank you. Great. Okay, I'm going to take items 20 and 21 next. Andy has to see away at some stage. So borough-wide safety. Fire safety is the first item 20, which is at page 4 of the supplementary agenda number 1. And this forced me to introduce on the basis of that whilst a lot of concern, obviously, since Grenfell Tower has concerned our own housing stock, actually there is a wider estate, public estate, that we as a local authority have to be mindful of. And this report sets out the work that we have done, both in response to requests from DCLG and our own work, not only with our own estate, but also looking at what housing associations are doing, what we've done with regard to our own commercial estate, other measures that we've taken in respect to council dwellings, our appointment of an expert independent consultancy, BD7, to undertake an independent fire risk management audit and a top-down review of the council's fire safety processes and procedures. And also work looking at TNRA calls. We did debate at council assembly, as colleagues will know, the Ledbury Towers and concerns that have been raised about the about fire safety there, and that work is ongoing. Both work to put right the colleagues, really this is an updating report. That there is no recommendation that we're putting before, that I'm putting before Cabinet this afternoon in respect of any particular further steps in terms of sprinkler systems or installation of sprinkler systems. We're going to wait for the report back from the experts that we've requested on that point. But there are 4 recommendations which are set out at pages 4 and 5 of the supplementary agenda. So I think this is a question of really reassuring everyone across the borough that whilst we have had, whilst we spent a lot of time looking at fire risks and fire risk assessment since 2009 and our own fatal fire at Black Canal House in Camberwell, that is absolutely no cause for us to be complacent or to think that this is a job that we have done in Southwark. There is still work to do and we're carrying on doing. Okay. Jerry, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Just to say, I think this is still a work in progress.
Yeah.
I think ultimately what we would really love to have is a map of all of the estates within Southwark, whether it's ours or somebody else's, and that there would be availability of information for anybody who is living or working in that stock. So I think that this is an ongoing corporate piece of work, and this is really a stock take of where we've got to.
Thanks very much indeed. I've got Mark and Richard and Steph.
Thank you, Jen, thank you, Jerry, and we wholeheartedly support everything that's in this report, obviously the work that's been done. And on Saturday we were outdoor knocking Marikiri House, which is the sister box to Lacanal, and a couple of weeks before that we door knocked Lacanal itself and spoke to all the residents there, and they were very assured of the level of fire safety advice and information they'd been given, which was good to see. My point, it's a question really, is a recognition before about private sector landlords, and just to make sure that the requirement of the private sector landlords who are licensed to confirm they've carried out their fire risk assessments, just to clarify and make sure that that's for those who are covered by the compulsory licensing, sorry, the additional licensing of all HMOs in the borough, but also the selective licensing for the private sector landlords generally in those specific areas of the borough. And then kind of question from that, thought that sparks in my mind, is that obviously only very specific areas of the borough do have private sector licensing, because the way the legislation is worded, that it has to be linked to very low levels of demand or antisocial behaviour, which for us is very difficult and not always necessarily applicable. And I was just wondering, as part of our lobbying work to government, whether we need to be making a very clear case to them that there should be licensing of all private rented sector properties, for the reasons we've discussed previously here that we're all signed up to, but also as well to make sure that fire risk assessments and fire safety is taken into account for every single private rented home in the borough, given that a large number of them died in amongst our tower blocks, and that will be the same story across the rest of the country. So I just wonder if that's something we need to consider as part of our lobbying work.
Something that you had a conversation about, at the minute we can't compel people to do that. We can obviously through our own licensing scheme. I think that compulsion is a difficult one at the minute for any private sector landlord, and it is something I think that would have to be set by national government as a requirement.
Okay, Richard?
A number of questions. First of all, I'd like to thank Stephanie and Jerry and her officers as well about the work following the deputation to Council Assembly from the three towers. I think it's clear that residents there appreciate some of the work that's been done. Since that motion, obviously, given the way the Constitution works, we couldn't take the motion that was agreed there this meeting, and so it won't come to our next Cabinet meeting. It's a little unfortunate timing, but I think this report gives us a good opportunity to look at some of those things. One of the things which is very much still an issue and was highlighted in our emergency motion, again, it was clear yesterday at the SGTO meeting about fire safety, is the concern still about the wardens at Ledbury and about how effective they are at their job, whether they've been properly trained, whether they communicate properly. I know there were some issues about fire drill at Peter Church on Friday. So just wanted to hear a little bit more about what steps are being made to ensure that the fire worry. We need to make sure that that people are safe with those wardens there. Secondly, again, comes out the work from Ledbury. We're doing work in terms of type 4 assessments. I wondered, are we considering that for the rest of the tower blocks in Southwark about the need to do that sort of level of fire risk assessment? Thirdly, there's clearly going to be coming out of all this a huge bill for the council in terms of fire safety work. I know that Leader's already approached government about the ability for the councils to borrow. I think personally, actually, this is a nationwide issue that is not entirely of our own making. Government ought to be sticking their own hands into their own pockets, and what we ought to be doing to lobby about that, and what we might do with other councils to lobby for that. And fourthly, just to pick up what appeared to be a slight inconsistency between the answers to the public question about cladding and what we say in this report about cladding, because we seem to be talking about two different things. It's probably useful to have some consistency about language about cladding. So we've talked in the public question about the sort of fire siren shooting that's been put outside that's done by British Gas at various blocks. And that's obviously different to the aluminium coated or zinc coated cladding that we've had in places like Walkstone, but there's a slight danger that we get mixed messages if we're using the two terms to mean two different things in two different places.
On the first point, my understanding is that the shifts for the wardens have been reduced from 12 to 8 hours. Yeah, and so that has already been done. I mean, the ideal situation is not to have any fire marshals in the blocks at all. And one of the things that we're looking at in the short term is putting in place a communal alarm system within the lobbies, which would mean that fire marshals would not be required. And we've got a solution for that, which we will put in place as quickly as possible. And we will only have fire marshals where we know we've got particular vulnerabilities and that people may need particular additional assistance over and beyond the communal fire alarms. As of this week, we put in place a dedicated team for the Ledbury, which will mean that there will be a resident services officer for each of the blocks, and their responsibility will be to develop those local relationships with all of the residents in each of the tower blocks, as well as assist people who want to move through the assessment process by Band 1. So that's something that is being put in place as of Monday, and we're just finalising a letter out to all residents so that they know how they can apply for Band 1 if that's what they want to do. On the second point about FRA Type 4 risk assessments, those have already started. We are doing an additional fire risk assessment of all of our 174 tower blocks, regardless of where they are within the programme. And those Type 4 fire risk assessments, for those of you who don't know, are not just visual inspections, but are also intrusive inspections to really see what's behind the walls, if you like, and what's in the cavities and whether additional fire stopping work is required. Our fire safety team are already on that, and that has started. And we made a commitment to Overview and Scrutiny Committee that we will provide publicly fire risk assessments, and we hope to have that in place by the end of August. On the final point, which is about finance and lobbying, my understanding is that the leader and Councillor Crown have already written a letter specifically on those points, and that was appended to the report that went to Overview and Scrutiny Commission last Thursday. And on the cladding point, I think you're right about the definition of cladding, but I think the reality is that residents often see cladding as the British Gas works, for example. I think that we do need to specify that those British Gas wraps of buildings are not of concern, but residents living in those blocks do think that they've been clad. So there is some semantics there, but also an understanding of how residents perceive the blocks in which they themselves live too.
Yeah, mine was a question that was really to say that a lot of work has gone to this, and to say thank you to all the officers who've been involved, because I know people have been working around the clock and have really put their all into this. And as Peter said, we can't be complacent, and fire safety is an ongoing issue. Richard, in terms also of lobbying, our three MPs have also written to Secretary of State, also saying that funding has to be given by central government, because I think you know, as we said when it comes to Fiona's reports, you know, there is hardly any money there. You know, you can't just cut successive cuts to local authorities and then expect us to foot the bill for this. We will do if we have to, but we don't want. We feel that the local central government needs to do that. I just want to sort of say, you know, from our point of view, you know, we're getting as much communication out as possible on this to residents. There's been 3 letters that have gone out to all our people who live on our estates as an addition of Southwark Life that was launched yesterday specifically for fire safety to everybody in the borough, and that's online as well, so people can launch that, have a look at that because it gives some really good helpful tips and hints around fire safety. We are also launching a resident group, a task and finish group made up of residents to look at fire safety and how we communicate things and look at their ideas as well. So there's a lot that's happening, but it is movable, and this report, you know, tomorrow, the day after that, there will be things that we need to add to it, because we're finding, as we're doing tests and as it's come out, you know,
as I think people picked up, there's a few areas we know where things are challenging, but considering where we are financially and the very immense challenges we face, I think we're doing extraordinarily well to deliver our council plan as promised.
Thank you very much indeed, Fiona. Well, I think we received the report and noted and commend its good progress, and again, the complacency will carry on delivering again targets that we just set. Thank you very much. It goes on to Council Assembly.
Yeah, the next one.
Next.
I think it's November.
Okay. Thanks very much indeed, Steve. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. A Gateway Zero Strategic Options Division Professional Technical Services. It sounds dry, is it?
Well, actually, as I was the officer responsible for restrictions of building design services, which was the council's internal, if you like, building consultancy technical support team.
Yeah.
Restricted it at the time for a number of reasons, many of which are sort of highlighted in this report about having an in-house technical team, about peaks and troughs in, if you like, in the climate, about technical skills, about significant issues around some technical projects which were delivered, which have significant issues with them, like the Leisure Centre in Peckham is one of the examples, and also value for money as well, and also sort of building design services being able to recruit and retain staff of the calibre and the technical expertise required to support the myriad of projects we have, everything from a leisure centre to window replacement in the housing project to mechanical engineering services, etc. There are, Kent County Council does provide, if you like, a service which can be accessed by the local authorities in terms of their technical, if you like, supporting, but there's nothing to explore further because you know, the London-wide one, and in fact the GLA are keen to explore the potential of the GLA providing that service to local authorities across London, and I know that I'm just asking GLA exploring that.
Okay, so you weren't saying it's a complete no-no, but it's something certainly we should be exploring as part of this Gateway Zero potentially. I think there's a recognition that there isn't the capacity, and doesn't need to be the capacity within individual boroughs for the reasons that you said, but you know, on a more cross-borough basis, maybe there is something. If we could really make a virtue out of this, then that would be even better. Okay, so can we add? Oh, sorry, Fiona.
I mean, you briefly touched upon diversity, Peter. I did want to raise that quite particularly. I know Harriet Harm has written to me on behalf of Stephen Lawrence Trust about the lack of diversity, particularly in architecture and the architectural firms that we use, that we, along with many other London boroughs, rarely ever use BAME-led architectural practices. That's not really picked up in this report, but it's noted it would be in the Gateway 1. I just wanted to stress the importance of that.
Yeah, Mark.
There's also sort of relevant, I think, two comments. I suppose the sort of look that glanced briefly, briefly fleeted over my face, was that to make sure that we do get the breadth of experience and talent that we need, and that we don't repeat some of the mistakes that were made in the 60s and 70s, where you had borough architects, etc., that had a particular view, and then certain types of development happening, I wasn't alive. I wasn't even a glint in the eye, as they say. Anyway, but just to make sure we don't accidentally repeat the mistakes of the past with the best intentions.
Oh no.
The other one is more practically on Councillor Colley's very important point. Is there's an IDM that's sitting with me at the moment in terms of agreeing the two frameworks, Hyde and Peabody, and renewing those for architectural services for our new build council homes. Councillor Pollock has already raised with me a very long list of points of concern he's got with that approach and making sure we're bringing in new practices. But in that idea that's due to come through, making sure that if we do renew those frameworks, we go over other frameworks for the next couple of phases of new build design, that the BAME representation of architecture practice and also local apprentices, because we require it for people who build the new homes, so why not require it of the people that design the new homes?
Great, thank you very much indeed. So can we add in a very emphasised recommendation that we also look at a multi-bar approach to forming. Okay, and with that, can we agree?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. It was really exciting, actually. Yeah. There we are. Okay, now we've got a load of financial ones. No. It's just grim news. Okay, so we're going to start with item 14, I think, aren't we? 13, was it 14? I've got ambulances.
13 is revenue out, 14 is capital. And then we come back to 12. Doesn't make sense to do next year.
Okay, my notes are wrong. Anyway, 12, 13 and 14, you take them in the order if you want to.
But tell us which one you're doing.
Yeah.
13 first, I can do 13, 12 and then 14 is a slight separate capital.
My 13 is revenue monitoring report.
Yeah.
Oh, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Yep. Go with that then.
So this report picks up and reports to us how we did in terms of delivering our budget in 2016-17. The last report we had on this was at month 8, and you'll recall that we were predicting some very sizable overspends on the council's budget. I'm going to just draw people to paragraph 21, which is table 1, which is the summary outturn for the year. The good news is that it was pretty much as expected, perhaps even slightly improved on where we were expecting at month 8, but of course that's only limited good news because nonetheless there were some extremely sizable overspends against budget, most notably in children and adults, where you can see at the figure at the top right of the table, £14.8 million variance after use of reserves, and then a couple of rows down in housing modernisation, the 4.1 million, which is principally no recourse to public funds. Those are areas where we knew we were going to have significant overspends and where considerable amounts of work are underway to bring things back on track. So, for instance, in this current year, there's additional funding gone in our budget for adult care. There's better care funding. I'm going to let Don about that because he's the expert on what we will and will not be able to do with it, which is a big uncertainty. But Duncan will explain that better than I will. Children protected the budget, but nonetheless government funding, which a higher level was agreed. Basic bill of £19.9 million, very significant amount of savings to find. There's the potential for that gap to be closed somewhat by improved better care fund, but that is subject to ongoing negotiations, all kinds of restrictions and rules that we need to work through with our health partners. But that has the potential to bring that gap down to 16.4 million if we are able to fully apply that additional funding to our existing social care services. I'll mention that at the moment this report does not make any assumptions about council tax increasing. There is a potential to raise a further £1.8 million if we went for the maximum 1.99% council tax increase without a referendum. And that's the summary.
Thank you very much indeed, Fiona. Any comments? Obviously, it's eyes down for trying to find these savings over the summer as we begin our budget change process.
I think it'd probably be useful if Duncan could talk a little about better care funding, and because this is very much an emergent situation, a big uncertainty both in the current year with something like 7.4 million resting on it, as well as the additional funding for next year.
Yeah, tell us all about the better care funding.
Can I talk about resilience first? The top 100 managers had a really good session yesterday about resilience, and in the context of the financial remit and the budget, there's a need for financial resilience, but also a bit of spiritual resilience, I think, as well. This is relentless, this pressure that we face on our finances, and Southwark, I hate to say it again, is one of the worst affected, if not the worst affected borough in London by reduced government funding. And regardless of the pressures that we see internally from demand and cost, we just can't put that situation to one side, and we need to lobby more fiercely actually for the Fair Funding Review, which did survive the Queen's speech and did move through from the previous government, and this is our best chance, I think, of getting a fair share of the quantum available for local government through funding settlements moving forward. In terms of the details of this for this position for next year, the biggest risk that we have is recovering the cost pressures, demand pressures and overspends within children's, adults and indeed public health. The Budget Recovery Board continues to move on, and we are assuming that by the end of this financial year we will recover that situation in full. Now that's a big ask. We've got something like 40 action plans in place at the moment, 20 for adults, 14 for children's and 6 for public health. They're going to be scrutinised through OSC in the next month or so, and also through Audit and Governance Committee, where Dave and I can talk more fully about what's in those plans. But clearly they do need to be delivered in full by the 1st of April next year to work from this set of assumptions that we're seeking, which is pretty hard work in any event. The Improved Better Care Fund that the Chancellor announced in March, about, what was it, 10 days after we'd set our budget. Well, you know, we can't knock it, it's good news, 7.4 million in this year, and I think as we heard that announcement, we thought we had free access to that money as a council. It's really unfortunate, I have to say, from the finance profession point of view, that we now see that there are strings attached. I saw today the first quarterly report in draft that we need to submit back to DCLG and the Department of Health, explaining to them what we spent the money on. This is a string, I think, too far, and within the report I think it sets out that there is an option for the Section 151 officers to make a representation to government saying that we do not actually need to get the agreement from other parties as to how we spend that money. And while I don't think we're in the position to push that nuclear button yet, it's something that I wouldn't like to disregard. So IBCF, very large sums, contribute significantly to dealing with the pressures that we have, but we need to do that at the moment through a shared agreement with the CCG, and I hope they'll be very sympathetic when it comes to that, not only for 17-18 but also for 18-19 as well. Fiona mentioned the education pressures. Again, we're assuming that Schools for One can continue to make the significant contributions that they are making to sustain our education services at the incredible level that they currently perform at. It was reassuring at one level, wasn't it, to see the extra money from government coming through yesterday from within their own budget, from within the education, from within the DFE budget, to simply enable the services or the funding to stand still in the context of a reduced but still an inflation rate running today, I think about 2.6%. So the IBCF, the Budget Recovery Board work, the education pressures are all incredibly serious as we move forward. And I guess on a positive note, just to finish, our council tax and our business rate retention remains buoyant. There is a modest amount of additional resources going into this remit for 18-19, and again that pays testament, I think, to Southwark's house building programme and indeed planning process and regeneration process that is keeping the borough alive. And actually without those resources over the last 4 or 5 years we'd be in a much worse position. So there is some good news in the middle of all of this trauma, but I know with processes that we've had and the processes that we've seen working over the last 5 or 6 years, this is a challenge that we will overcome. But I'm afraid we'll then very quickly get stuck into 1920, which is a further reduction in government funding of about £12 million. So we'll go with a 1-year budget this year because I think we had to, in the uncertainty, but brace yourself for further challenges ahead.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Duncan, and I'll take Richard briefly.
Thank you. I think your comments on BCF are very helpful. It seems a bizarre situation to me that on the one hand we've got Better Care Fund, which is held by the CCG, that we need to agree to, and we get some of that money, and then we've got Improved Better Care Fund, which we get, but we have to ask the CCG permission on how to use it. That we get the IBCF being told this is money you can spend freely, and then after the first quarter is completed, we're told actually these are the rules for spending the money, and you've got to give us a return on telling us how you spent it against these conditions that we didn't tell you about in the first place. And obviously, I think because we've actually got a good record in Southwark about how we avoid bed blocking, we're not in a bad place for that, and hopefully we're performing in a way that government would see as being positive. But we know that about 20 other councils have been fined for having, for not doing that, and so there is a risk that not only do we get a slap on the wrist for not doing these things effectively, that we get money taken off of us for not doing these things, for not obeying rules that they didn't tell us about in the first place. So I think there's some real challenges here. I think you're right, we need to keep in reserve the matter of what we do in terms of asking for that exemption, but I think we also need to look at how we can make sure that at least locally we get as far as we can in having a smooth process between ourselves and the CCG, so we can sign things off quickly, get their agreements to things quickly, because I think we need that in the back pocket in terms of the exemption, but actually we need to try and see if there is a way we can make things work as smoothly as possible at a local level first before we go there.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Okay, well, on this report on page 61 to page 62, there are 10 recommendations that we're asked to agree. Can we do that?
Agree.
Thank you very much indeed. And then finally, Fiona, the outturn capital monitoring, probably a slightly less controversial.
Always a happier report because it's not spending money. Although I will also say something about how we're funding that, because that's getting slightly more difficult, and people need to be aware of that. So in the previous financial year, we invested £252 million in capital. That's about 100 million in the general fund, principally on our schools, expanding our many wonderful primary schools, investing in their fabric, really important work for our communities and the future of opportunities for our children, that they have really excellent environments in which to learn. We also saw some increasingly seeing significant capital investments in order to generate revenue. It's an important opportunity for us, and we have another report later on the agenda today to look at that again. We are establishing within this report the funding within the capital programme to back that up. And the other element, of course, is our housing investment programme, which last year invested £153 million, principally in building new council homes and also upgrading our existing council homes, for instance, kitchens and bathroom upgrades. Now, I want to highlight at this point that we have a housing investment programme at the moment, but that should be seen as being potentially subject to significant change as we do the work looking at what fire safety works may be needed in the future. So that work is underway, looking at whether we need to take forward measures such as sprinkler systems, and we should bear in mind that that will potentially have a major impact on our housing investment programme. Whether we can afford to continue at the same rate with existing projects and do additional fire safety works is something we will have to look at very closely when we take those decisions in the autumn. On the funding of the capital programme, I would note it's on page 125 that this year we have had to do some internal borrowing to finance the investment general fund capital programme. While we do get significant capital receipts, capital grants and section 106 funding, we are now beginning to also rely on borrowing, and that is likely to continue in the future, and we do need to make sure that any new capital authorising going forward, bear that in mind, that we are not as awash with capital finance as we once were, while we are continuing to see income coming in, particularly from some of the big regeneration projects which allow us to reinvest in the borough. We are able to borrow at a reasonable rate, so it is often the right thing to do, but it's not quite as easy as it once was.
Ian Wingfield.
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarity's sake, recommendation 9, I presume relates solely to recommendation 8 and not the rest of the capital budget. It doesn't actually state that.
That's correct. Sorry. That is correct. It's in the event of any emergency resources required emerging from those local and national demands.
I think that recommendation should state that, otherwise it's open-ended.
Yeah, I agree.
I wouldn't want to put you under more pressure.
No, thank you for that. Okay. That's what was intended.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed for that. Ian, well, there are 10 recommendations there for us to... 10 recommendations or 11 recommendations for finance? What's going on?
Makes a lot of recommendations.
A lot of recommendations. Everyone says no to report. Okay, so 10 recommendations there.
Where we always start.
On page 105 and 6. Can we agree those recommendations, colleagues? Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, we move on to a gateway 1, procurement strategy approval, Southwark external solicitors framework. That starts at page 131. And we can take this quite briefly. We, up until now, we have been part of a framework agreement to provide solicitors' advice to